I walked into my parents' house with a gift, and 40 minutes later my dad threw a cake at me. My uncle pulled a gun, and my grandma said, "Serves you right, Rooster." If someone had described that scenario to me beforehand, I would have laughed in their face. You're insane. That's my family, not a cult of brain-fried TikTokers. But now I know for sure, no screenwriter could ever invent trash to rival a real family reunion after years apart. My name's Nick. I'm 33. I live in another state, rent a modest apartment, work as a graphic designer. I have a wife I love, a couple of good friends, and, it seems, everything under control. Except for one thing, my family. I hadn't been back home for almost 5 years. After the last visit, I realized I was calmer, living without all that. Without the tense toasts, the friendly digs, and my perpetually drunk uncle reeking of cheap cologne and aggression. But then a message came from Mom. Surprise party. 35 years together. Come, it'll be fun. Nick, at least you try to be human for once. I ignored it, but my wife saw it. Maybe we should go? She asked. You saw how they treated me last time. They're your parents. You didn't cut them off forever. Sometimes forever is perfectly fine. But I caved. We arrived Friday evening. The old parental house, with its garden, fake lawn, and yard gnomes. Just like childhood. Only now there were 3 times more gnomes. 3 cars stood in the driveway. From the garage blasted some 90s pop track. Mom opened the door like she'd been lurking there, waiting. Nick. Oh, and she's with you. I'm so glad. She hugged us both at once. The moment was awkward. Her perfume smelled like she had picked all of them at once. You can't even imagine how many people came, she announced proudly. She wasn't joking. Inside were already 15 people. And that was just guests. Nephews ran up and down the stairs. Grandma sat in her chair clutching the AC remote, switching it off every 2 minutes. And in the center of the table, the ultimate trashy buffet spread. Pineapple jello, herring sandwiches, a giant bowl of Olivier salad, and a cake with pink frosting that read, 35 years of hell. Joke. Or maybe not. Then came the gifts. Aunt Lena handed over a jar of pickled mushrooms and a clay mug that read, Happiness in a Shack. I made it myself, she declared proudly. A garland on the ceiling blinked neon words. LOL, happy, no war, all in sync. Dad stood in the corner, chatting with the neighbor, bottle in hand, looking like he was one sigh away from vomiting out of sheer boredom. Where can we sit in peace? My wife whispered. Maybe the kitchen? So we went. The kitchen was empty, silent. A minute later, I heard a sob. My wife stood by the window, wiping her eyes. What happened? Your mom called me, a monkey from a warming state, and said I'm probably on antibiotics instead of vitamins. She was serious? She laughed, but then said, You're not sensitive, right? Everything inside me clenched. I remembered why. 5 years ago, I left without saying goodbye. We don't have to take this. We'll leave in the morning. I promise. Half an hour later, the official feast began. Everyone sat down. Mom tapped her fork against a glass. Dear friends, relatives, random neighbors we invited by mistake. Laughter. 35 years together. That's a trial. And we passed it. Barely, Dad muttered. And now a toast from our pride. Our eldest son. Nick, say something. At least here. Let's hear something decent from you. I froze. All eyes locked on me. Mom's lips pressed tight. Dad's eyelids heavy. My brother, sitting opposite, gnawed a bone, pretending it didn't concern him. Grandma adjusted her glasses. Someone whispered, Oh, this'll be awkward. I stood up, glass in hand, and realized I was trapped. I had just started my toast when Mom cut me off with, well, finally, without swearing, I'm proud of you. And then my aunt launched into how chickens get fat from vaccines. And my brother declared he no longer eats anything with letters. And that was just the beginning. I got up from my chair and nearly knocked over my glass. My hands were shaking. In front of me, 12 people, most acting like I wasn't their son, but a TV left on pause. I forced out, Well, glad you're all here. 35 years, that's probably a feat. I wish you at least 10 more, if you want to. Mom immediately clapped her hands. Oh, finally, without cursing. I'm proud of you. I wasn't going to. Yes, yes. It's just nice to hear you sober and without complaints. See? Everyone's happy. Happy? Dad downed half a shot without even glancing at me. Grandma dropped something under the table, bent down, and muttered, Nick always sits, like the world owes him, but nobody needs him. Aunt Lena adjusted her scarf and suddenly started her lecture. By the way, did you know that vaccinated chickens develop hormonal imbalances? I read it. It's all Bill Gates. He controls the farms. My wife squeezed my knee under the table. I turned. Her face begged for just one thing. When are we leaving? My brother, by the way, looked like he was in some TikTok poker face challenge. He silently ate salad, then suddenly announced, I don't eat anything with letters anymore. Everyone stared. What do you mean? The neighbor asked. Well, pasta. There were words on the package. Chips. Any products with text. It's imposed thinking. Silence. Only in the corner a music box began playing My Heart Will Go On. Dad stood up. Well, since the sons already gave their toasts, let's move on to the fun part. Video. Video. Several relatives echoed in unison. They dragged in an old VHS player, hooked it to the TV, and Mom ceremoniously slid in a cassette. On screen me as a kid jumping on the couch. Then our dog. Then Mom and Dad on the beach. Everyone laughed, commented. Next scene, the kitchen. The camera shaking. Someone, probably Grandma, filming from behind the door. Mom stood at the stove. Dad sat at the table drinking. And suddenly, you're not even the father of these kids. You were out chasing women while I was stuck with the stroller. You scream at the kids, you idiot. You belong in an asylum, not on vacation. Mom in real life froze. Dad went red. Someone gave a nervous laugh. My brother quickly turned off the TV. Oops, wrong tape, I guess. Thank you for watching. They're not lated. They're more. Henry Mosden. Dead silence hung. I felt every eye turn to me again. Aunt Lena whispered to the neighbor. He brings bad energy. Every time he shows up, something breaks. Remember when Grandpa's finger locked up? Oh yeah, and the toilet flooded. I stood up and went outside, just to breathe. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. My wife stayed inside. I'd asked for 5 minutes. The yard was damp, smelling of coal and cigarettes. I leaned against the porch railing and looked at the dark sky. And that's when I saw them. My brother and that blonde who'd been hovering around Dad all evening. Tall, white dress, bold lipstick. I'd thought she was Dad's new fling. They flirted. He poured her wine. She called him Mr. Charisma. But now, she stood pressed up against my brother. He held her by the waist. She stroked his cheek, and then kissed him. Not on the cheek, not quick, as if it was normal, as if Dad wasn't her husband. I froze. Only the warm plastic of the railing under my palm reminded me I was still on planet Earth. My head raced. This is a mistake. It's not her. I misunderstood. Maybe it's not my brother. But no, it was him and her in a moment that should have stayed hidden. Just not from me. I stepped back, accidentally hit a bucket. Metal clanged. They both turned. The blonde quickly stepped away. My brother lowered his gaze. I didn't say a word, just went back inside. The atmosphere had shifted. Or maybe it was just me. People spoke quieter. Mom disappeared into the kitchen. Dad poured another drink. The tablecloth was stained. The room felt stifling. I sat down next to my wife. We're leaving tomorrow, early. She nodded. I already booked a hotel. We stayed silent. And somewhere in another room, that old tape played again on the TV. Only this time, without sound. I thought it couldn't get worse. And then Grandma handed me a childhood drawing with the words, "Look, a shitty little artist." And in that drawing, I was hiding under the table while Mom and Dad fought. When I came back inside after the scene with my brother and that woman, everything felt frozen. Like in a movie where the actors forgot their lines. Mom rushed between the tables and the kitchen, pretending nothing had happened. Dad sat in his chair, staring at one spot, taking shots like he was swallowing poison on schedule. My brother, the same brother who a minute ago was kissing, possibly, our father's mistress, sat at the piano, pressing the keys silently. I walked up, Do you even realize what you're doing? He didn't turn his head. Just keep quiet. You're sleeping with his wife? You're here for 2 days, Nick. Don't think you get to hand out judgments now. Dinner dragged on like a theater of the absurd. Aunt Lena ranted about how kids had become too fragile because of Wi-Fi. Grandma whispered to someone, "I always said the eldest would be useless." And here, he is bitter and without a family. My wife had locked herself in the bathroom, literally. I couldn't blame her. Then Mom returned with a huge box. And now, gifts. Not just for us, but for you all. I decided everyone should get a memory. She started handing out old things, photos, children's cards, even worn-out toys. She stopped in front of me. "Here, Nick, found this especially for you. You drew it yourself. Must have been 6. I unwrapped the yellowed sheet. On it was a crude child's drawing. Stick figures, a table, someone screaming, and at the bottom, in clumsy letters, Mom and Dad are yelling, and I'm hiding under the table. And Grandma, standing right there, shouted out loud, "Look, a shitty little artist." The room erupted in laughter. I didn't laugh. I couldn't even feel my legs. "Do you even hear yourselves?" I said, standing. "You're laughing at something I drew when I was scared, hiding from your screaming. That's funny to you, huh?" "Oh, stop it, Nick," Mom snapped. "It's just a memory." "It's not a memory. It's proof you all kept pretending nothing ever happened." That's when my uncle stood up. Yes, that uncle, Mom's brother, who always loomed around with that "I'm in charge here" look. He set his glass down and said, "What the hell did you just say? You heard me. And, by the way, you were hugging my mother in the kitchen when I was 8. Are you trying to say I—" "Yes, I saw it. I was hiding under the table. And you know what? You weren't just drunk." The room went silent. Dad lifted his head. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the truth. All of you are more comfortable living in lies. But you exposed yourselves in the videos, in the hand-me-downs, in those crooked smiles." My uncle clenched his fist. "Boy, you'd better shut your mouth. You're no uncle to me. You're a mistake everyone just pretended to forget." He slowly reached into his man purse, and, sticking out of it, was a handle. "Is that a threat?" I asked. "It's a warning." And then, Dad suddenly stood, sharply, and threw the cake at me. Pink frosting splattered across my chest. Sponge chunks stuck to my pants. Mom screamed. Someone clapped. Someone actually applauded. "You always ruin the atmosphere, Nick," Grandma shouted. "You were wrong from the day you were born." "No, it's all of you who are wrong," I shouted back. And thank God I left. I turned to my wife. She was already by the door, bag in hand. "We're leaving." "Now," she nodded. Not a word. Not an emotion. Just enough. As we walked out, voices followed us. "Look at them, dressed like they're from a magazine." His therapist scrambled his brain. "That's why he's raging. Family's never good enough for him. We lived just fine back then and nothing happened." Once we stepped outside, it was quiet. I sat behind the wheel, hands trembling. My wife beside me, silent. I started the engine but didn't move. Just sat there. A minute. Another. 5. "Are you okay?" she finally asked. "I don't know. I'm ashamed I even believed things could be normal." And then, from the porch came a voice. "You destroyed this family, Nick. I hope you're happy." It was my father. I turned on the headlights and drove away. I went back to my parents' house for just a few minutes and realized I'd already been erased from it. From all the photos. From all the memories. Just cut out. As if I had never existed. We left that night. The road was empty. No cars. No music. No words. Only silence, the kind that felt like the whole world had frozen. Not to disturb my anger as it finished speaking for me. We stopped at a motel on the outskirts. Stupid. Filthy. With torn carpet and a Coke machine buzzing like a motorcycle. But for me and my wife, it was a safe place. A place where no one says you ruin the atmosphere when all you want is to leave. I didn't sleep. Just lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling while my wife breathed evenly and quietly beside me. At 6:12 a.m., the first message arrived. "They took your father away. His heart. Thanks to you." I stared at the screen. No emotions, no pain, just automatic guilt. Then came the next one. Aunt Lena, you act like a brat. Came, made a mess, left. Drove everyone crazy. Hope you're proud. Nothing. Just read it. No reply. Uncle, watch your mouth. Nick, there are things better left buried, especially in family. I wanted to ignore it all. Just leave. But then I remembered I'd left my jacket in the hallway with my documents and office keys. I'll be quick. There and back, I told my wife. She nodded, though her eyes said, "Why are you going back in there?" The house was quiet. The door unlocked. I stepped inside and immediately felt it. The party was gone. Like someone had vacuumed the air out. The kitchen was empty. The table bare. The tablecloth bunched into a knot. On the floor stuck out a plastic rose from the cake. On the fridge, a note held by a kitten magnet. You destroyed the family. Hope you're happy. In the living room, everything looked the same. Piano, TV, crooked chairs. Except on the floor lay a VHS tape, the one with that scene. I went to the hallway, found my jacket, and noticed an album. Old, leather, worn, lying on the console, as if someone had deliberately placed it there. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The first pages were what I expected. My parents' wedding. Mom in her dress. Dad young, like he hadn't given up on everything yet. Then, childhood. Kids. The beach. A bike. A Christmas tree. But on the third page, I stopped. The photo, a birthday. Cake. Candles. Mom, Dad, brother, Grandma. But I wasn't there. Even though I remember, it was my day. I was in a green t-shirt. I blew out the candles myself. I turned the page. Again. Family. A picnic. Dad and my brother grilling meat. I was standing next to them. I remember I burned myself and cried. But in the photo, I wasn't there. Only when I looked closer did I realize. The photos were cut. I was cut out. In one picture, the corner was empty. The blade had sliced right where I should have been. In another, a shirt fragment. Mine cropped out. In a third, a crude Photoshop job. The background clone to fill the space where I had stood. They erased me. Not just forgotten. Not just deleted from a chat. Physically removed from every photo. From history. From memory. From proof that I was ever part of this house. I closed the album. Stood. Went to the bathroom. Looked in the mirror. Stared at myself for a long time. And suddenly said aloud, I shouldn't come back here. And I won't. It wasn't a decision. It was liberation. I returned to the motel. My wife understood everything from my face. Ready to go? Yes, please. We left the city at 10:42. I didn't look back. Not once. On the road, no words. Just the quiet radio. Someone singing. Family is home, but not always. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel loneliness, but silence. Calm, without jabs, without fake smiles, without the phrase, at least here, say something decent for once. A month had passed, and then came a message, a photo of the cake. On it the words, 35 years of patience, all for nothing. And you think you're a hero? We left and never looked back. A day passed. Then a week, then two. I waited for someone to text, to call, to barge into my DMs with another. You betrayed us, or you never knew how to forgive. But nothing. Silence. Too much silence. And in that silence, I finally realized just how used I was to living in anxiety. Every morning, every night. That subconscious expectation, something's about to happen. A scandal. A breakdown. Screaming over nothing. But nothing came. My wife ironed clothes. The cat sprawled on the windowsill. I worked, ate in the kitchen, read books, and I felt something strange. So this is what it's like? To just live. Simply live? 2.5 weeks in, a letter arrived. A real one. Paper. No return address. But I knew immediately it was from my brother, Nick. I didn't know what to say. And honestly, I still don't. You were right. You said all this back when we were kids. I was just too scared, too desperate to stay in the family, to be loved. But now I understand We never had a family. We had a show, a performance, where everyone played a role. You walked off stage. I stayed. And there was no applause anyway. I'm sorry I stayed silent. And thank you for at least saving yourself. I read the letter 3 times. I didn't reply. Just folded it neatly and put it in a drawer. Let it stay there. A month passed. I was in the kitchen. Evening, pizza in the oven, my wife chopping salad. Just an ordinary evening. And then, my phone. Unknown number. At first I wanted to ignore it, but the screen flashed. Message with attachment. I opened it. A photograph. The same cake from the party. Smashed. Filthy. A plastic rose at the side. On the frosting, written, 35 years of patience, all for nothing. And you think you're a hero? No signature. No name. Just a reminder. They were still there. Still watching. Still unforgiving. I hit delete. And for the first time, didn't flinch. I sat at the table. My wife set a plate in front of me. You okay? Yeah. For real this time. We ate in silence, but not from resentment. From the kind of silence that finally feels friendly. Outside, an ordinary evening. Traffic lights. People hurrying. Dogs barking somewhere. And I suddenly understood. I was free. Not from family. Not from childhood. But from the idea that I had to earn love by being convenient, quiet, compliant, forgiving. I didn't have to anymore. No one does. I looked at my wife again. She laughed just because the pizza wouldn't slice right. And I said, you know, no one's obligated to endure what's called family just because it's the one they were given. She nodded. Amen. I turned off my phone and just ate pizza with the person I loved in a home where no one throws cake, where no one cuts you out of albums, where you just exist. And that's enough.